Hey guys, this is the second part of my Armor the Sphinx review. So I realized a little too late when I was editing that I had way too much to say to put in one video. So this is just going to be the spoilery part of my chat. And I hope you guys have fun listening to my crazy ramblings.
Okay, we've reached the spoiler part of my review, and boy, are there a lot of things that I could cover in this section of the video. Because I don't want to take forever, I just picked a couple things that I wanted to talk about, but this book is filled with so many things. There are so many bombs that are dropped on you, so many conversations, so many tidbits, all these things, the relationships with people. There's just like so much. The first thing that I really I need to talk about is Senlin and Edith. Oh my goodness. Okay, I didn't mention it in my Senlin Ascends review because in my head I was like, this isn't gonna happen. Like, it can't possibly happen now. I won't bring it up until it happens because, I feel like I'm calling it now and I don't know how I feel about it. And I was right. They kiss at the end of this book, and I am very, very conflicted because while I love Edith and I think that Senlin and Edith would be very cute together and would be very compatible, I do not think that they should have kissed now. I do not think that trying to enter into a relationship or confusing any of the things that they have right now will be worth it or work out at all, especially now that she has been made captain of the ship by the Sphinx themselves, because Senlin didn't take captainship as seriously as I feel Edith does. I mean, he was serious about being captain. He wanted to make sure everything was happening, but Edith knows what it means to be captain and all the things that it should be. And so I feel like her becoming captain is going to definitely be conflicting with those things. In this case, honestly, I don't think it actually has anything to do with her being a woman and being captain, which is nice because finally that's not a thing that we have to think about, because I don't think that that's the reason why there would be friction between them. But uh, it's just gonna mess with so many things. And also, Senlin's goal is finding his wife. He said that he would try in Pelthia and that that's where he's going to draw the line. If he can't find her there, then he's going to give up and lead his life and figure out what he's going on from there, because it's been over a year and he doesn't know what else he can possibly do. And so he put this timeline on himself. So why didn't he just wait? Why didn't they just wait until he tried? And then if he tried, then he either finds Maria or he doesn't. If he doesn't find her, then they're home free and they can be together. But, they had to screw it up because hormones or whatever. Is he starting to fall out of love with Maria because of the time and because of how horrible his visions of her have been? I was worried that because they were terrible to him, it might start tainting his view of her as a person. I think that he would have grown apart from her anyway. Like, my theory is that the longer they spend away from each other in the tower, the more different that Senlin's going to be when he finally sees her, and vice versa, and that they're going to grow apart and decide that they shouldn't be together anymore. I still think that that might happen, but I just really wish that he hadn't kissed Edith because it just feels slimy and it feels kind of like cheating, and I feel like it undermines his, drive to be in the tower and find his wife. So what is his purpose if he no longer cares about doing that? Anyway, I digress about Senlin and Edith. I feel like it's a disaster in the making right now. I hope that, I'm not right, but I feel like things are not going to be well for a while and that it might mess up their chance in the long run. Iren and Valletta's relationship in this story. Again, I have notes because I can't remember everything I want to tell you guys. But when Iren asked the Sphinx to visit her and she asked to get bionic enhancements because she feels like she's aging and she's becoming weaker and she doesn't know what's wrong with her and she thinks that she's sick or something. And the Sphinx basically tells her, in a different term, you're going through menopause. And she doesn't realize what that is. And this scene I feel is it's very sweet, and it's also telling in another way. So the Sphinx could have used Iren, could have used her and manipulated her, but instead the Sphinx was kind and understanding. And I think it's partially because the Sphinx is a woman, which we find out, which is a whole other bomb, which I wasn't going to get to quite yet, but I think it impacts this scene. And so when Iren goes and sees Valletta and she's so upset and she asks Valletta, well, what does this mean? And she tells her. And then Iren starts crying and she says, I'm going to have no one and I'm going to be all alone. I teared up reading that because I love Iren, and just that, like I said before, the way that Bancroft is exploring what it means to age as a woman who has the job and the lifestyle that Iren has, and how devastating it must be to start seeing your body like not be able to do what you want it to do. Like that was just heartbreaking for me. And then Valletta had to go and do it, and she had to tell her, I love you, and like I will always be here for you. You will always have me. You will always have the rest of the crew. We love you. And then she like has told her like you're like a mother to me. Like it was so touching. It was probably one of my favorite parts of the entire book, and seeing that kind of relationship be portrayed, like it was pretty perfect, and I just loved that Bancroft did that. I think it was really meaningful, and I wish I could see more of that in fantasy in general. Loved it. um the Silk Gardens and the zoo, I'm gonna talk about this as fast as I can. Spiders, no, big no. The whole scenes where they were explaining what it was like for the spiders to be crawling over them, I almost threw the book down. I don't do spiders, and that was so like unnerving. I could feel things crawling on me. I was just like, stop, stop. I was pro spider eaters, even though they were big and scary and trying to kill them. I was like, yes, go eat all the spiders, please. Where they have to, make their way to the Golden Zoo, which is this big, creepy, looks like a bird cage thing, and there's all these mechanical creatures, and there's all these Hods. And so you find out that the Hod King, the Marat guy with his wheelchair, and you find out that he has bionic legs, and so he was a wake man for the Sphinx, and then he gave that up because he's, anti-Sphinx, anti-slavery for the Hods, but is he really? Because he's using them himself for his own means. And there's so many questions I have after their whole encounter, after Senlin and Edith's encounter with them. Because we have the Hods, we have, this cachet of weapons that they have, the fact that some of them are beating the crap out of Hods that are trying to like make their way through, and then just throwing them in the ground and covering them with moss and just being these like wretched, horrible, murderous beings. And then there's the Hods that take their colors off and then put them back. There's like Hods that are being plants within the structure of the tower, like they're working for the Marat, but they're undercover. There's so much going on, and I love that we get to see this, like, we get all these questions from this one part of the story, and then it kind of goes away for a while, and it's going to pop up again, and that it's really important. And I probably am sounding incoherent right now, but there's so much about the Golden Zoo and what's going on with the Marat and kind of uprising that he seems to be planning. And then there's the whole thing about the books, that the Hods are scribbling in these books, completely blacking out all of the writing. And they had to bring, when they were coming to get this audience with Marat, they had to bring these books, and they went through all the trouble to steal these books. And then they find out that they're just being drawn on and ruined. And it's just, as a reader, it's just heartbreaking. I'm like, stop drawing in these freaking books, people. Can you stop ruining them? Like, have you ever seen a video of someone like ripping a book in half? Like, my heart breaks. Adam is going on a treasure hunt. He gets Edith to take him on this treasure hunt because he's escaping the Sphinx. It's like the stars are aligning for Adam and what he wants to happen and the way he feels like he's going to repay Senlin, which I feel like isn't going to work at all and wouldn't have worked if he had successfully done it to begin with, was to find treasure for him from above the clouds. And so he and Edith go all the way up there, and then they get to the top of the tower, and it's like they're at the top of the tower, And then they see the sparking people and they get attacked by them, these crazy people with these crazy like electricity weapons, which tells you where some of that electricity from New Babel's going. And the not even the surprising thing, like the top of the tower, the sparking people, not the surprising thing. The surprising thing is that they seem to know Adam, and they seem to know him more than they should. Like, it sounded to me almost like he was sort of like not like a celebrity, but someone everyone knows about, like a character you'd watch on TV. They know all this weird personal information about him, but they don't know anything about Edith. And so they took away Adam, and it's like, oh my god, are we gonna see point of views from him in the next story, or are we just not gonna hear from him for a while and then finally get what's going on? I want to follow him. I want to know. We learned so much about the Sphinx. There's so much to talk about. I cannot possibly touch on all of it. The Sphinx and Valletta. Valletta sneaks out of her room and like becomes friends with the Sphinx, which is very strange, but also kind of sweet, and made me feel really nervous for her for a long time, but then it was fine. The Sphinx isn't doing anything to harm her, at least yet, but you see the Sphinx being sweet with Valletta and trusting Valletta. So we find out that the Sphinx is a woman. She unveils herself and her spoony self, and you find out that she's this old woman who doesn't have like lower limbs, so she floats around on this tea tray, which is just strange. And she trusts Valletta enough to let her see her at her most vulnerable, to replace the batteries on her legs. Well, to replace the batteries on her, the whole thing, it's not legs. She's like mostly bionic. It's crazy. I want to know how old this Sphinx is. Like, we've learned so much about the lore of the tower and the lore of the Sphinx, and about this bricklayer person who was the original architect of the tower, or the builder of the tower. When I read that part, I was like, oh man, Valletta's going to regret that she didn't take out the Sphinx when she gets a chance. And the one big thing I have to say about the Sphinx is that I am no longer sure that the Sphinx is a villain. I think the Sphinx is a very morally gray character, but I no longer think that she's this big evil baddie like I thought before the beginning of this book. Because you learn so much about the Sphinx and about the way that she views herself as like a keeper of the tower, and how she's trying to protect civilization and people from the tower falling. She makes it sound like the entirety of civilization is like dependent upon the tower, and the tower being safe and being this bastion of knowledge and energy and culture. And so I'm interested to see exactly how far that extends from what she said. Oh, things we found out. The Red Hand's alive. That's great. Scares the crap out of Edith. Scares the crap out of me. Who knows what's going to happen? How much longer it's going to take until he's back and up and running. Boom. The thing about Valletta and the Sphinx that I love is that Valletta learns that the Sphinx is a woman. So when we are in Valletta's point of view, she uses the her, hers, she pronouns to refer to the Sphinx in her own head. But when we're seeing it from a different point of view, the Sphinx is a he. Like, everybody calls him a he. It was just a cool thing that I noticed that I really appreciated that Bancroft did. The Sphinx calls Senlin out on his drug use, and the whole part where he's like, well, duh, it's the painting, you idiot. And I figured that out at the beginning of the book. I was like, oh my god, Senlin, stop touching the painting. You're like sniffing drugs every time you look at your naked picture of your wife. And it's just so... it's so cheap, and I love it. It's like, of course he's continually drugging himself. It's like he thinks I only have one vice, and it's that I miss my wife, and that I have this painting and I want to look at it all the time because it reminds me of her. And it turns out that his actual vice is the drug, and that it's on the painting, and that if he would just let go of the painting, then he would be okay. And I feel like that has to do with the overarch of the plot, that like maybe once he lets go of his wife finally, then other things are going to snap into place. I don't know. Ferdinand and Byron, I love them. Our little mechanical friends. Well, they're not little, they're giant. Ferdinand the bull and Byron the stag. I've gotten chastised because I called him a deer once. But they're both precious and must be protected at all costs, even though they're the Sphinx's little minions. Ferdinand loves music and has like a little music box in his chest, and he can play different songs when he's feeling different emotions. And so I love that and think it's just adorable. And then Byron is just this precious little, like, proper stag who wants to have tea and do all these things. And then you find out that Edith hurt his feelings because he thought they were friends, and then she used him because she didn't think he liked her. But he wanted to be friends and thought they were friends. And I wanted to hug this mechanical stag so badly when he had that conversation with Edith. I was like, how dare you hurt him? Don't you ever hurt him again. And so I really hope we get more Ferdinand and Byron in the next couple of books because I just love them. Okay, the Bridge of Babel, which is just like the whole thing with the paintings and the machine and everything, like just blew my mind. In the theater, I knew that there was something more to the paintings. I knew that when we found out there were multiples of them, like something has got to be on them. It has to give us information about something. I figured that might be some sort of code or like unlocking something. Didn't think it was going to happen quite the way that it did with the weird like projector thing, but I thought it was done really well. And the conversations that the Sphinx has with Senlin in that one part of the story are insane. But I need to know what's behind that door. The idea, the whole concept that there's a part of the tower that the Sphinx cannot access, like, how have they not figured out how to open it manually? Like, use a freaking bomb or. But no, apparently they can't get into it. And I want to know more about the purpose of the tower, what this Bridge of Babel is. What does he mean when he says a bridge to the heavens? And this is where really the concept of knowledge and technology and responsibility super come into play, this conversation with Senlin and the Sphinx, and how the Sphinx doesn't want to take responsibility for anything that's been happening in the tower because of the technology that he helped create and the electricity that he's creating and everything that the bricklayer laid down, no pun intended. And he basically says, like, I'm not responsible for any of this. They did what they wanted with that. But it's also like, you're controlling all this knowledge by keeping this library locked away. You could have controlled this technology so that it wasn't being used for nefarious purposes, because you're controlling all this other technology, like the elevators and the clockwork animals and all sorts of stuff, because the Sphinx's lair is so much more technologically advanced than any other part of the tower, and certainly more than the land outside of the tower, like where Senlin and his wife are from, their little fishing village where they don't even have electricity. Like, it makes me think so much, and I love it. And I don't know if I have answers to any of the questions that I feel like Bancroft has posed to us, but I am pondering and I am excited to think more about that and see more about what our characters think about that as the story progresses. The last couple things, we see Edith getting her upgrade and the Sphinx pretty much saying, I need you to be my souped up wake man. You're going to be like my arm, which, let me tell you, Arm of the Sphinx. I love it when the name of the book like comes into play. So she's now the extension of the Sphinx, for lack of a better term, and like has more privileges than the other Wakemen do. Like, she's been given permission to kill other Wakemen, which nobody else has. And the Sphinx even says that there's one particular one that she needs her to kill. And I'm pretty sure that's gonna end up being Marat. Maybe not. Maybe we'll get introduced to some more of them. I'm hoping to get like either more ringdoms or more like cool stuff happening in the next book where we meet a lot more new characters, because I feel like we didn't meet a ton of new characters this time around. But I'm interested to see what her duties are and how those will conflict with her duties to the crew and what happens with Senlin and like his journey, and how, like, I feel like they're gonna split up when they get to Pelphia, because that's where they're heading now on their brand new ship that they were given by the Sphinx, well, loaned, because their ship was too far gone. And then we find out that the Sphinx has a job for everyone, and so he's going to send them to Pelphia. They're going to send them to Pelphia. See, I keep messing up the Sphinx's pronouns. I'm terrible. I swear I'm trying. They're sending Senlin and the crew to Pelphia, and they say that Senlin needs to infiltrate the Hods. So how far is he going to infiltrate the Hods? Is he going to have to go back to the Golden Zoo? Like, what's going to be going on? This is interesting to see what happens next, especially since the next book's called The Hod King, and they referenced Marat and called him the Hod King. So my predictions were totally wrong, where I thought it was going to be either Senlin or Teru. Definitely not the case. The Hod King is someone completely different. My bad. I've become so like paranoid about everything in these books now. I'm like, is it this? Is it that? Is this some clue for something? And I'm definitely overthinking it, but I'm having so much fun overthinking it that I don't even care. And so we're off on an adventure at the ending, and then we get that epilogue of the Sphinx like watching this video clip, and you see that it's of Maria with a brand new baby. And she's, in this very nice looking, richish house, and there's a man who looks very handsome and dashing with her, talking to her about the baby. And she's like, don't blame her. And I don't know what that's about, but let me tell you this. I do not for 1 minute believe that that baby is the Duke's. That baby is not the Duke's, because we do not know when that clip is from. Because we could, it's not like the Sphinx got that clip and then immediately played it and looked at it. That's not what happened. They picked a clip up and put it in the thing and looked at it. I'm pretty sure that that clip is from way long ago, and that Senlin himself is the dad of that baby. I swear to you that he is the father, and we're going to find that out, and that is going to be another complication with Edith. I was like, please don't let Maria be pregnant in this next book on my review for Senlin Ascends, and man, it happened, and I was so, I was justified, but I was also really mad because I did not want that to happen, and now I'm worried for Maria, and I'm worried for Senlin, and I'm worried about him and Edith, and him and Maria, and I don't even know how to feel about it, guys. But that whole ending, the last 20 pages, it was like one bomb dropped on us after another. And if I ever wanted to pick up a book immediately after, it was this one, and I cannot, or just killing me. So, hoping to get to the Hod King really soon. Totally just rambled at you for a really long time trying to figure out my thoughts, my spoiler thoughts about this book, because there was so much to unpack and so much to talk about. I loved Arm of the Sphinx. I thought there was great character development. I thought the story was better. I thought the writing was better. I think Bancroft knocked it out of the park. I'm so excited to see what he does next, because I don't know how much better it's going to be able to get. I'm looking forward to book 4. I've already pre-ordered it, and I really, really hope that he sticks the landing on this, and that the end and how everything ties up in the 4th book is great, because if it is, this might be up there in my top 5 series of all time. No joke. I love it so much. So that's it. Thank you guys for listening to my review. I know it's a little bit long, but these books are so good and there's so much to talk about. So I hope that if you haven't picked up the book, you do. If you have read it already, you're just as jazzed as I am for the Hod King. And I hope you have a great night. Please, if you enjoy this video, like and subscribe. That way you can see my other reviews when they come out and all the other types of videos that I do. I'll be really, really grateful to see you on my channel. Bye.